is going to be about a character called Hermann Höfle. And in 2000, a document turned up in the British Public Records Office, and this document has been called the Höfle telegram, for want of a better way of putting it. And it's a rather odd in as much as I shall read it to you now. Two telegrams were found. Now, in the way that the Germans used to communicate with themselves was by having a sort of a typewriter-like apparatus called the Enigma, and within this Enigma were various sort of dials inside, which would then produce a code. So when they wrote to each other, they would be able to send this rather difficult code, and people wouldn't understand it. However, the codes were broken, and a place called Bletchley Park, which is near Milton Keynes, British intelligence decoded these messages, and a couple of messages in particular really do stand out, which completely turned the tide of battles. For example, there's the counterattack at Avranches in 1944, which was completely destroyed thanks to the fact that the Allies were waiting for them, and indeed attack on the in North Africa as well in 1943, where the Allies knew precisely what Rommel was going to be doing, and then they were able to win a big victory thanks to that. Now, these codes themselves, there's huge amounts of them, and what would happen is that, I imagine what happened, because I wasn't there at the time, but is that these messages would be coming through, people would be actually writing up what was on them, and then probably they had one or two code words which they were looking for. In particular, might be the names of certain generals, and it could be anything. But if they didn't understand it, if the person who had to make a rather rapid decision on what was in this document, then it would be put to one side. They might come back to them later, think, hang on, I might have seen something like that yesterday or something like that. But on the whole, they all ended up being put in big files, and then they ended up finding their way eventually to the Public Records Office. This was a secret until around 1970 or thereabouts. So it wasn't even known to the public. Anyway, you can have access to these things. They are available in the Public Records Office. You have to wait about 3 weeks to be able to get in there now, but you can actually do it. But there's mountains of them, and they're written on this onion paper, and they're very difficult to actually read. Now, we do, however, have two documents, two telegrams. No, the first one, these are, if memory serves me correctly, 15th of January 1943, and the first one says the following. It says OMQ is Lublin. It says Geheim Reichssache, so secret, top secret, state matter, an das Reichssicherheitsamt zu Handen SS Obersturmbannführer Eichmann, Berlin. So to the RSHA, the Reich Security Main Office, for the attention of zu Handen, for the hands of SS Obersturmbannführer Eichmann and Berlin, but then it says rest missed in English. So whatever that was, we don't know, but we can assume that it was going to be exactly the same as the message which was sent only 5 minutes later, which starts off exactly the same, but this one is not to Eichmann, but it says an den Befehlshaber der Sicherheitspolizei zu Handen SS Obersturmbannführer Heim. So to the commander of the security police, for the attention of SS Obersturmbannführer Heim. Heim was then in Krakow, and Heim was in charge of the police, obviously, and he, not much is actually known about him, but he died of cancer in 1944. He was about 37, if I remember rightly off the top of my head, when he died. But then we've got the next bit, which is the curious bit. It says the subject is the 14 daily report for Einsatz Reinhardt. Einsatz means action or operation, something like that. And it says then Zugang, entry, access to the 31st of December 1942. Then it gives the names of various places. It says L 12,761, B 0, S 515, T 10,335, to altogether 23,611. So what that is referring to, anybody who's ever used any documents from archives from Nazi times will realize that they used the concentration camps with the one letter, or one or two. Auschwitz is usually AU, but so clearly what it is referring to is L is Lublin, so Lublin Majdanek, B Bełżec, S Sobibor, T Treblinka. Stand, then it says so overall state, if you like, total 31st of December 1942, L 24,733, B Bełżec 434,508, S Sobibor 101,370, T, it says for Treblinka 71,355, total 1,274,166. Now, clearly, when it said Treblinka there, it missed out a 5 at the end. Obviously, these people working very fast, and they could miss it. So the total for Treblinka was 713,555 people who had been murdered, and this has been signed SS und Polizeiführer Lublin Höfle Sturmbannführer. Sturmbannführer is the roughly equivalent of major. So it's one step down from Obersturmbannführer, which was Eichmann, which we saw in the previous telegram. So this could be a sort of a statistician sending his report. There was a statistician called Höfle, but we know from this he wasn't based in Lublin. This is one Hermann Julius Höfle who sent this message. And because we know what his role was, this is effectively a confession to murder. Effectively, it's his answer to anyway. So now the question comes: who was this Höfle and what did he do? And there's really not a huge amount of information available for those who are general public, but his name keeps coming up in archives and all the rest of this type of thing over and over again. He has been mentioned in the press at the time. I have found an article that appeared in a press release from the 15th of February 1962, which suggests he'd been arrested. He was going to be put on trial in Vienna. He was then 47 years old, and it was then suggested that he had played a part in the murder of 30,000 Jews in the Warsaw Ghetto. Well, we now see from this document that it wasn't 30,000 in the Warsaw Ghetto. It was closer to the horrendous total. 30,000 is horrendous total, but it was much more than that. And the thing is, the fact that it actually says only 30,000 shows how little was known about the Reinhardt murders at the time. Now, slightly changing the subject now, there's a McDonald's in Klagenfurt, and in this McDonald's in the Wiener Gasse, I haven't been to Klagenfurt now since 2013, but when I will be in Klagenfurt the next time, I shall be going to the McDonald's, because this McDonald's used to be a place called the Café Lurk. Now, the Café Lurk, I don't know when it was set up, but it was certainly doing good business at the end of the First World War. It was owned by a Mr. Lurk, who was a nationalist, sort of pan-German nationalist, and he had a son who was called Ernst Lurk. And in the 30s, this became a place where a number of characters would hang out. They were Nazis. Now, the Nazi Party was illegal in Germany, so they're part of the underground now, and they sort of dream about the great days to come when they would be in charge. Now, people who actually used to hang out there include Odilo Globocnik. We know Kaltenbrunner was there. There's a number of people who used to hang out there. I suspect that Höfle was also one of them, although Höfle himself actually came from Salzburg. And so he was born in 1911, and he was married at the age of 22. He had 6 children, one son, 5 daughters. He was a part of the Nazi Party from an early age. And as it was illegal in Austria, he'd even been in prison for it. He'd been in Salzburg police prison from 1935, 1936. Just actually give one or two other names of people we used to hang out. There's Reinhold von Meurenschild. There was Albert Susiti. There was there's quite a lot of people. Maybe these people aren't so well known. I think Michelson also might have actually been there as well. But anyway, the strange thing is that these people followed each other around, and they were base. Okay, Kaltenbrunner was close to Hitler. He made a sort of separate career path, but they brought each other around. They were in Lublin, and it was Globocnik who used to send them out to the individual ghettos when they had to be to do something to threaten the Judenrat there, and then all of them went off together or nearly all of them went off together. Sorry, not all of them, but most of them went off together to the Adriatic coastal zone in northern it's part of Italy. After the surrender of Italy, it was sort of a military area. Anyway, I'll come on to that. So Höfle himself he ran an SS group, and in March of 1938. The Nazi Germany annexed Austria, and he played his part in it. Indeed, on the 9th of November 1938, when there was the pogrom that happened there, he took such a part in it. He used the violence, and this brought him to the attention of Adolf Eichmann. And with this is something which then did affect his career. Now, Globocnik knew Hitler personally. I mean, Globocnik had meetings with Hitler in the 30s, and the two of them then it allowed Globocnik, when he was posted to Lublin, to actually take his friends with him. In the meantime, however, from Austria, Höfle ended up in occupied Czechoslovakia, and then he was sent to Nowy Sącz in Poland. In Poland, he was headed a Volksdeutscher Selbstschutz group. Now, the Volksdeutscher Selbstschutz was a self-protection organization for a so-called self-protection organization for Germans. So they accusing the Poles of attacking them. They sort of formed their own. That's a bit like what Putin sort of does today, sort of claiming that there's a minority which is being attacked, and they formed their own groups together to be being controlled by Nazi Germany, or in case of by the Kremlin, and then to sort of rebel against the locals. But these Selbstschutzer were extremely violent. Now, in Nowy Sącz, which is near Krakow, there was a very, if any, I mean, the German-speaking population must have been really, really, really small. In Poland in 1939, there were approximately 750,000 German-speaking people. It needs to be pointed out, of course, that because they were German-speaking, they weren't pro-Hitler necessarily. They might have liked the Polish regime, but they might have thought less of Hitler. Same, I mean, Ukraine's a very good example. There's plenty of Russian speakers, but they have a rather negative opinion of Putin. So it's I think it's very, very similar. Now, Odilo Globocnik although he knew Hitler, he'd been involved in trying to underground Nazi politics in the 1930s. He was made Gauleiter, the Nazi party head of Vienna, and he seeing the opportunity to make a bit of cash, he started immediately getting involved in corrupt activities, in smuggling operations and things of this. Now he got caught, and he got demoted. Now this is rather odd that he actually got demoted. It's not the fact that he got caught, but the fact that he didn't use his influence to try and get out of this problem. And this is something I don't really understand. Maybe he failed to grease the right palms or whatever. Anyway, he was demoted to the ranks. He went off to Poland in the army, so he was in there during the Polish campaign. But Himmler decided that was enough punishment for him, and then made him the SS and police leader in Lublin in Poland. And so from there, and so then when Globotnik's there, he invited all his mates over. So that was the normal sort of thing. Now, some people in the SS, and I can't explain why they wanted to do this, decided that they needed to build a border defense system against the Soviet Union. Now, in 26th of August 1939, Molotov and Ribbentrop got together. They created, effectively, they started the Second World War between the two of them. They divided Poland in two. They invaded Poland. And so the border was put largely on the River Bug. Now, in the north, there's an area, I did a video of it. I showed you where the border came away from the Bug. Then it went up to the East Prussian border. But in the south, there's a place where the Bug then flowed into Soviet territory. And there was, say, a land border. And for whatever reason, they decided they needed to build a big trench, effectively. It's a sort of a protection. Now, of this work, you still can see parts of it. I mean, but it really, there's not much left there considering the amount of work. For what they did was they tried to get people to dig this trench for them, and they were slaves. So they got them largely from Jewish labor. For example, you've got horrendous accounts of people who were sent from Warsaw, amongst many other places, to actually work there. And these people were slaves. They worked free of charge. They were housed in whatever was available, if not the open sky, and they were fed by the locals. If the locals decided to give them their food or whatever. But for the work they were actually doing, the SS input was zero, except for guarding them, into these people. So lots and lots of people died. The defenses themselves had absolutely zero value, and the Wehrmacht had said it was a complete waste of time and told them not to do it. And if we look at the events of 1944, you'll see it didn't hold up the Soviets at all. Unlike other defense positions, for example, if you look at the East Wall that was built, that held the Soviets up for 3 days. Well, okay, 3 days is something. This didn't, not at all, zero, nothing. And so the army was right. It was completely useless. Now, whilst this was going on, this wall was being built, somebody had come up with the idea of having a reservation, and that's the word that was used, to sort of dump Jews. And this was to be based in this general area. And we know that even in the Times of the 16th of December 1939, we read that 45,000 Jews had been taken there, and they were more or less just dumped there. The train stopped, and they were told to get out the train and then do whatever they want to do. That was it. So they had this idea of sort of dumping people there. Himmler tried to stop it the day after they started, but it seemed it went on anyway. And so the point of doing that, I can only see as a way of their racial madness. They're putting Jewish people in one place. Thing is, once more, there was no budget for it, and this is something that keeps coming over and over with the Holocaust. Who's paying for it? Where's the money coming from? Etc. But one thing of the plans such as this is this reservation called the Nisko plan, because Nisko is the town where it was actually done. I think it's part of the Nazi mentality that Jews must work. And what they We see this in posters and other things, that work for them is physical labor. We have to bear in mind that the people who were making the policy were largely themselves people who'd worked physically. They weren't people who had, I don't know, intellectual or economic backgrounds. They were people who'd been physical laborers. And so therefore they assumed that if somebody isn't a physical laborer, then they're not working. I mean, I've come across that myself in my life experiences as well. Now, Höfle was one of the people who was running one of these camps in this area as well. Now, one thing I need to point out about Höfle as well is that he wasn't educated. This is, for example, in this telegram he sent, he spelled Reinhardt incorrectly. I don't know if that was because the T and the D sounds the same in German, but he spelt it incorrectly, or maybe it was transcribed incorrectly. I don't know. On the 22nd of June 1941, Nazi Germany invaded its former ally, the Soviet Union. This resulted in huge amounts of prisoners of war coming in. And one thing which is utterly incredible to believe, the bad organization, whereas they could take all these prisoners of war, they weren't ready for them. They didn't have the means of feeding them or looking after them. You would thought that this was something they would have thought out beforehand. And not only that, at the same time, there was a shortage of labor. So they needed people to do work. They had all these potential workers, but they left them. They penned them up in fields, effectively, with nothing, just barbed wire around them, and then they left them there to die. So you had tens of thousands of people, Soviet POWs, just dying. And there's these camps, Lublin, Helm, Rovno, Biała Podlaska, Białystok, Żytomir, what's the other one? Grodno. They were there, just an incredible thing to actually do to people, many of whom had actually surrendered because they didn't want to fight for the Bolshevik regime. That is another thing which is very difficult to understand. Now, it took some time before it was realized that these people could be used to fight, or at least do something for the Nazis. And this came, they had the idea of setting up a camp a place called Travniki, which is not so far from Lublin. And there they sort of trained these people, these Travniki men, and these Travniki men became part of the Holocaust. Now, the Travniki men were recruited amongst Soviet prisoners of war, and so they volunteered to do it to stop themselves starving, as a rule. Some of them, though, showed exceptional cruelty and brutality. But then again, they were brought up within the Soviet state, former Soviet soldiers, and so maybe this was just part of the way they were, bearing in mind also the inherent anti-Semitism that existed in Russia, land of the pogroms. So this all, I think this all added to it. Or maybe they thought if they didn't show enough brutality, they might find themselves in yet another camp again. So, but anyway, Höfle was he was at Travniki, later became the commandant at the Travniki camp. Now, in Lublin itself, it was where the Operation Reinhardt, the murder of the Jews, was actually planned from. Now, on the 13th of October 1941, Himmler appointed Globocnik to head this Operation Reinhardt, Aktion Reinhardt, Einsatz Reinhardt, and but of course it wasn't called that then yet. It was called that later. It was called that after the death of Reinhard Heydrich. And anyway, but Himmler gave Globocnik the role, which was quite clearly then to kill off the Jews in the general government. And then now Höfle was his chief of staff. And when people they swore an oath. They swore an oath, which I shall now read to you. It was a form which said the following, which they had to sign. I have been thoroughly informed and instructed by SS Hauptsturmführer Höfle as head of the Reinhardt Operations Department at the SS and Police Leader Headquarters in the Lublin district, and under no circumstances should I disclose either orally or in writing the events to anyone outside the circle of employees in the Reinhardt operations, the relocation of Jews. The events surrounding the resettlement of Jews are secret. I am aware that the duty of secrecy continues to exist even after I leave the service. So everybody had to sign this document, and so therefore he's utterly central to this. Even Globotnik had told him he had to take care of it, and he's taken care of it. Now, Hitler's decision to murder the Jews was announced to his staff on the 11th of the 12th of December 1941, the day after the declaration of war in the against the United States. He probably came to this decision to actually do something like that beforehand. So if Himmler's telling Globotnik to get ready in October, and they started moving the people from the T4 killing centers to Poland from August, but mainly in October of 1941. Eichmann's description of when he went to Belzec clearly places him there October, November of 1941. So it was quite clear that maybe Hitler wasn't thinking, how's he going to do it, or maybe he's not going to do it, or what. He didn't know. It needs to be pointed out, of course, that people were being mass murdered by Nazis as from around the 25th or 23rd, really, of June 1941 in the places that had been occupied by the Soviet Union and during its time of alliance with Nazi Germany. Anyway, so we know that Höfle was giving the orders out for the destruction of the Jewish community of Lublin. In Lublin itself, you have a go there, you've got a castle, and around the castle is this huge area. It's got a big car park now, and on the side it's got a big park, and there's a major road on one side, and there's a pretty big road and a very nice new shopping centre on the other side of the road. That was once part of the Jewish area of Lublin. Old houses. I found once a tourist guide from 1922 to Lublin and showed what the streets looked like. These streets were all destroyed by the Nazis in a period after they had deported the Jewish population. And a friend of mine, though, Michael Tregenza, who lived there, he said that he could remember seeing houses were probably in the 60s still there, but there can't have been much there by that time. So it was Höfle who conveyed the instructions to the others what should happen. The Jewish population of Lublin started to be deported. They were taken to Belzec in March of 1942. In May of 1942, a death camp opened at Sobibor, and in July it was Treblinka. Now, as far as the destruction of the Jewish population of Warsaw is concerned, we once more have records of what Höfle was doing, because on the 22nd of July 1942, he was in Warsaw. He was sent there. He traveled there with Georg Mikkelsen, Kurt Klaassen, Ernst Lurch, and Hermann Worthoff. And the first thing they did on arrival, or on the morning after they arrived, they went to see Ferdinand von Salmen-Frankenegg. He was the head of the police there. He'd just been appointed. He's quite known because he was the person who was supposed to liquidate the ghetto on 19th of April 1943, and he made a mess of it, and he was replaced. Jürgen Stroop got rid of him. So from the Höfle went with Mikkelsen to see the head of the ghetto, who was Adam Cherniakov. And I've got here, I wrote down here, sorry, I'm looking for, there we are. I wrote down a copy, the person who was the interpreter survived the war. So Adam Chernyakov, born 1880, he was the head of the Warsaw Ghetto. He was sort of made head of the Judenrat. He didn't really have a great deal of choice in the matter. And whereas he did try to alleviate the situation for the people who were living in the ghetto, there was not much he could really do. And not only that, most people regarded him as a traitor. So I don't think that he really was particularly popular. I mean, he was in a very, very difficult situation, as I think, as all of them. Anyway, I've got here something I got from an archive, which is a discussion, and it's a document. It's from 1946. It was the interpreter sent this, and it said Höfle came into the office and he started with the words, "As of today, will begin the deportation of the Jews from Warsaw. You know that there are too many here. The Jewish Council are in charge of taking care of this task, and as far as if you don't do your duties, you will hang by the noose." And then he pointed outside at a garden where it had been made a children's play area, and which had been opened only a few days earlier by Adam Chernyakov, and he's in a nice white suit with a straw hat, and he recalled that day. And then he started off. Höfle started with a voice which he says was particularly cruel and sadistic, and he started these words: "Anordnung und Auflagen für den Judenrat in Warschau," the conditions and for the Judenrat in Warsaw. And then he dictated something, but stopping from time to time just to make sure that the interpreter was keeping up with him. Now, what the instructions were that 6,000 people were to be taken outside, sent to the Umschlagplatz, the transit place in the Warsaw Ghetto, and then sent off to Treblinka to be killed. And so it says they were given till 1600 hours that day for the first 6,000 to be ready. In fact, as it happened on that day, they deported even more people. Adam Chernyakov refused to sign the orders. There's a mention even of in the order, although it doesn't mention by name. But it says that the order has been given by the SS police Führer, which was Höfle, to do the following, and that's even in the poster which was put up. Anyway, Adam Chernyakov committed suicide, and from that moment on, between 6,000 and 7,000 people, or even sometimes even more, on 2 days in August of 19, there was more than 10,000 people were actually, and this went on 6,000 to 10,000 every day. The lowest number. And this great deportation has been called 25th of August. There was about 3,300 were sent out, and including the person I mentioned in my talk of yesterday. So this deportation is utterly in hand. Höfle is the one who gave the order to Adam Chernyakov of in the Warsaw Ghetto. On the 20th of April 1943, Hitler's 54th birthday, Höfle got the War Merit Cross First Class with swords. Now, after the Action Reinhardt came to an end in the late autumn of 1943, most of the staff were sent to the Adriatic, and they were based in Rijeka or Trieste or Udine or Mestre, and they were fighting Slovenian, Croatian, or Yugoslavian, if you like, partisans in this area. A number of them were killed. The losses were really high. Even Sobibor commandant, former commandant Reichleitner, he was killed on the 3rd of January 1944. Christian Wirth, head of Commandant of Belzec, head of the inspector for the Reinhardt camps, he was killed ambushed in May 1944. The death toll amongst the occupied there was quite high, and there were also massacres that took place. One massacre, for example, wrote about, I haven't published the video yet, except unless you've got premium, is the massacre of Lipa, which one person, Josef Oberhauser, who was in Shoah, he participated in that, Oberhauser being the driver of Christian Wirth. Anyway, but Höfle wasn't actually sent there. We know he was at Travniki, and he probably participated in the murder of the Jews who were still in Majdanek. After the breakout of Sobibor on the 14th of October 1943, Himmler decided to murder all the Jews in the Lublin region, and I think that it's pretty clear that Höfle was at Majdanek or Travniki on that day. On the 15th of February, he was transferred to 44. He was transferred to Sachsenhausen, and there he was in charge of the Guard Battalion. Now, compared to what he'd been doing before, this must have seemed to him to have been a demotion. And indeed, he wasn't well received in Sachsenhausen. He didn't, and he was. The camp commander wrote on the 17th of March 1944 that Höfle didn't appear to be up to the demands placed on the leader of the Guard force. So he got the Iron Cross second class with effect on that day, and then he was told to clear off. And the 13th of June 1944, there's a record of him in the headquarters of Waffen-SS in Greece. And next thing I know, he's in Austria at the end of the war. Now, how he ended up in Austria, I don't know. But what I do know is this: is that those that were based in the Adriatic coastal zone tried to escape, and they escaped north by fleeing through to the north of Italy to a place called Weissensee. If you see my video on Ernst Lurk, I went into this in some detail what actually happened. So Höfle was in a group which included Globocnik, Lurk, Georg Mikkelsen, Friedrich Reiner, Karl Hellesberger, Hugo Herzog, and Friedrich Plurb, and they hid on a place called Merslacker Alm, Weissensee. It's southern Carinthius, just over the border from Italy in the High Alps, very attractive place. And anyway, they were captured by a British group who went there. So indeed, they were assisted by a group of the Brandenburgers, who had been German commandos. In fact, one of it was a Lieutenant Ken Headley, later I think he was a major, 4th Queen's Hussars, and he saw some Brandenburgers on the road, and he pulled out a gun, and the Brandenburger said to him in perfect English, no, he said, don't worry, you don't need that, we're on your side now. And he said the Brandenburgers told them of these SS that were hiding out. And then there was a British group went up the mountain, and they surrounded it, and there they took these Nazis prisoner, including there was 2 women also amongst them. It would seem that night that were taken prisoners, Lurk at the first watch, then Mikkelsen, and then Höfle. But they were in a pretty bad state by this time. They had weapons, but they dumped them on the way to the hiding place. Some of them ended up in a hotel, and the hotel is actually, I looked at their website, it's still there today. Anyway, so they were then taken to a British base, a place called Paternion, and there was two of them already on a watch list. So they had these lists of people had to arrest. So as Reiner and Globocnik were known, and then there was a British officer, a German warned them, Siegfried Kummerer. Or he may have been Austrian, I don't know, a German or Austrian. He said that Globocnik was there, and so what they did was they made a trap for him, and so there was a British officer, Major Ramsey, and he went up to a balcony. If you see the castle today, it's still there, and it's got a balcony, and he shouted, "Globocnik!" And Globocnik, it seemed that he stopped or he recognized his name, and then he was pounced upon by Britain, they took him away. And then Globocnik arguing that he wasn't Globocnik, And anyway, but after about 150 meters being marched away, he bit down on cyanide and he died. There is a photograph of Höfle, and Mickelson, and there's the dead Globotnik lying there. So it's very poor quality photograph, but it's there. Anyway, they tried to revive Globotnik, but it was too late. He was dead. As far as Höfle was concerned, he was held there, didn't know who he was. Nobody knew who he was, and he was released from being a prisoner of war on the 30th of October 1947. He went back to Salzburg and he got a job as a car mechanic. Having now, in the meantime, I need to point in Poland, there were investigations, and that the Polish government requested his extradition on the 9th of July 1948, alongside that of Jürgen Stroop. Now, Jürgen Stroop, who was the responsible for the destruction of the ghetto, Stroop was extradited, but not Höfle. Now, I don't know if Höfle had been tipped off. It could have been so. There was plenty of people in the SS and others, but before the Austrian police got to his house, he fled to Italy, the same as Lurch did. He also fled to Italy. And so he stayed in Italy under an assumed name until 1951. Now, in northern Italy, even today, there's places around Bolzano. If you go into the countryside, there are places where they don't speak Italian. I went there I met some people in Paris, it was 40 years ago now, and they invited us to their place in Italy. So we went there, and nobody there spoke Italian at all. Maybe now it's slightly different, but there were these, and I think even then it was probably even more so. So it was easier to hide in northern Italy than it would have been in Austria, for example. Anyway, Lurch came back from Italy, went back to his father's cafe, and he started to run it. And he started. Indeed, if you watch the video I did, you will see that he hosted the future Eurovision Song Contest winner at his cafe. Anyway, it's a case of Höfle. He came back and he started hanging out with his SS mates again. But he didn't stay long in Salzburg. He cleared off to Germany, and then he came to the attention of the United States Counterintelligence Corps. And they used him for a source of information for a few months. I mean, they gave him 300 marks a month, which would have been like pocket money, really. He wouldn't have gone very far then. And but clearly wasn't much use to them whatsoever, and he clearly couldn't have any information. But he did tell them that the Polish authorities were after him, and that might have sounded good, as though that was a qualification that he was a good anti-communist. Anyway, so they let him go in June 1954, but without prejudice and for undisclosed reasons. So I don't think they realized he had no information to give them whatsoever. He probably got a couple of thousand marks off them, or not even that, and that was it. He went back to Austria after this, and now the big thing in his life would have been the capture of Adolf Eichmann on the 22nd of May 1960. Ben Gurion said that Adolf Eichmann had been captured. Eichmann was quite happy to talk, and he talked quite a lot. Now, Eichmann was blaming everybody but himself. Now, Eichmann is usually often thought to be Austrian. He wasn't. He was German, but he did, because his family moved to Austria when he was small, and everybody else in his family had Austrian nationality, but he never actually did. And Eichmann is also associated with Vienna, probably more than anywhere else. But Eichmann mentioned Höfle quite a lot. Not only that, in the case, we do have the records from which I sort of half translated for you a bit earlier, from the Warsaw Ghetto, which that he was known. And indeed, Höfle had even appeared in August 1949. There was an article in Le Monde Juif in Paris, and he also appeared in Gerald Reitlinger's book, The Final solution in 1953. So it wasn't as though he wasn't wanted. Now, but in Reitlinger's book, he was referred to as Hans, got the wrong first name. Anyway, so it was 31st of May 1960. It was Eichmann who was told the Israeli police that it was Hermann Höfle who showed him the first gassing facilities in the late summer of 41 when he was visiting the general government. Eichmann obviously got the date wrong, but all the same, he mentioned it was Höfle whom he mentioned. Now, Israel passed all this information on to Austria, and Höfle was arrested. And even in the Austrian press, and now they start referring to the forthcoming trial as a little Eichmann trial. And now Höfle said it's a mistaken identity. His first name was Hermann, and Reitlinger's book says it was Hans. So obviously that line of defense didn't work very well. But the Austrian authorities being well onto him, and they had 9 volumes of materials against him, 2.5 meters worth of paperwork against Höfle. And anyway, in the meantime, Adolf Eichmann was sentenced to death. He was hanged. And 11 weeks after the hanging of Adolf Eichmann at the age of 47, Hermann Höfle chose to follow him, and he committed suicide by hanging himself in the Vienna Criminal Court. And that was the end of him. The thing is, I think this Höfle telegram, one might have thought that it brought more things to light. In my opinion, this Höfle telegram is a confession to the murder of an incredibly high number of people, because as I hopefully have just demonstrated, he was very much involved in it. Now, anyway, I've actually written something. I'm going to which I'll get put together before long. So it'll be a video on him, which goes into far more detail than I've just done now, which is largely speaking off the top of my head. But anyway, so I'll have a look at your some of the questions here. So hello, Ben Craig. Jason asked, what was he doing during the war? I think I answered that one. Here's Hans Joachim Marseille says, tried your channel, lack history knowledge by. So anyway, okay, right. And Donald Trump writes, Gaza. Ben writes, I noticed McDonald's at the time, but so strange to picture these goals hanging out thinking what it could be. Yeah, this is something. It's like, I mean, sort of all when we're children, sort of may think, oh, what it's going to be like when I come to power, what it's going to be like. But yeah, this is a group of oddballs hanging out in a planning thing, but they actually get to do it. And that is the horrendous thing about this, that these characters are probably in a state of intoxication. Most of them are uneducated. Globotnik had access, because he got a job working with, he had access to explosives. And so he'd managed to get some, but he got the sack from that. And because it was a mining company, so I mean, you do need explosives in mining companies. Anyway, yeah, so I've got some. Donald Trump's there sending me an insult, but Murray, thanks for your comment. Otto, oh sorry, I won't read that out. Yeah. Boxwood writes, not having a plan for what to do with masses of Russian prisoners of war was actually also a plan. Yeah, I suppose. Yeah, there is some kind of planning in not having a plan, isn't it? Right. There are, Colin writes, there's some remnants of the old houses near Alea Krakowska and Lublin, also old building with connections to Jewish community. Yes, there are, but I mean, these are the ones in Alea Krakowska and Lublin, because this is like one of the main streets in Lublin. And so, yeah, but those ones are standing, but they're not wooden houses as the ones around the ghetto were. So weird, right? I'm actually reading Der Vernichte B2, second book from John Wittmark, highly recommended. Okay, I don't know that one. And Mick, sadly, I missed the start. Have you already discussed Operation Reinhardt? I think I might have mentioned that one. And Mick writes, given the lenient sentences of people like Oberhauser, Höfle might have just gotten a few years under German law. Well, he wasn't trying to, he was tried under Austrian law, and Austrians were even more lenient than the Germans were. No death sentences, well, because the death penalty didn't exist then, but I mean, even it didn't happen. Not only that, there were many people, it would seem, that actually chose to deliberately hide in Austria rather than hide in Germany, because the Germans eventually did come after them, whereas others didn't. Now, in the case of Oberhauser, is that Oberhauser was Josef Oberhauser was the driver of Christian Wirth, and he was in the Adriatic coastal area, and he like Globotz, like Höfle and the others, he was arrested by the British, but north of Weissensee, about 60 kilometers north at Bad Gastein, and he was in a POW camp, and from this POW camp, he was sent, he was released, and then he decided instead of going back home to Munich, he'd go to Hamburg, but he didn't quite get to Hamburg. He ended up in a place called Bevensen, which is about 45 kilometers to the southeast of Hamburg. For some reason, he was working in 47, 48, but for some reason, I can't quite explain why, he then went to Magdeburg, and he was arrested in Magdeburg for being a member of the SS, and also for what he did at Grafeneck, Bernburg, the T4 institution, and what was the other one we was in? Grafeneck, Bernburg, and Brandenburg. So two of them were in East Germany, and so therefore he was there, and he spent quite a lot of time there. And after that, he decided to go back to West Germany. And then this is before the borders were tightened up, so you couldn't get out one way or the other. And then he came under the investigation for what he had done at Beaujet's. Now there was the Beaujet's trial, which there was a number of people actually arrested there. They were all for that. They were all going to be put on trial in the 60s. And as it turned out, he was the only one who was actually tried. Now Oberhauser himself might have got a longer sentence had he not already been tried in East Germany, and they sort of took that into account when they gave him the ridiculous 4.5 years he eventually got, and then he got out early anyway. The thing is, in West Germany, the life sentence was 15 years, which is quite berserk, quite absurd in its own right. Anyway, Mick asked for a book on Globotnik. Yes, there's a one by what's his name, and I've forgotten the author's name. Oh, how embarrassing! Yeah, there is a book on Globotnik. I'll put it in one of my. Oh, it's gone. Hitler's Man in the East. That's the title. I've forgotten the name of the author. I can see what he looks like, but I can't forget what he looks. Anyway, Hitler's Man in the East. That's on Globotnik. Anyway, okay, right. So Mick says, yeah, Stangl hid in Austria. No, Stangl didn't hide in Austria. Stangl was from Austria. He's from near Gmund, and a lovely place was from. Actually stayed there, and he fled to Syria. And he was working in a weaving plant because he was a weaver himself originally. And the weaving plant, one of the owner of the plant started making advances on his daughter, or so he says. So then he fled to Brazil, and that's where he was when he was arrested. But it was the Germans, not the Austrians, who actually managed to get him back. Might ask, Globotnik was the inspector of Beaujet, Sobibor, and Treblinka. Yes, he was. And head of Operation Vine, SSPF and Lublin district, was SSPF and police leader. Are you still live, Alan? Asked John. I think so. And Christian Viet, sorry, 4.5 lives for 4.5 years for 434,000 lives. Yes, I mean, effectively, that's what it actually comes down to. John says there's a picture appears to show dead Globotnik. Yeah, I've actually published this on my video on Ernst Lurk, this photograph, and in this picture you can see both Mikkelsen and Höfle. If it is him, I mean, there is an argument that it isn't him at all, because it doesn't quite agree with the description that was given by the officers who were there. And Mick says, yeah, okay, hidden off. Okay, right. So thanks. Hello, David. I think that's about it for the moment, and I can say for them. I'll try and do something tomorrow. I'm not certain what I'm going to do yet, but I'll think of something. And this is something which really I find this part of this story about Höfle, which and not the others, but I find particularly interesting is how they were arrested. And I do, and not only that, this early life, this cafe, the McDonald's in Wienergasse, and this is I keep meaning I'll have to go and go there. I do actually I want to do this walk that they did up the Weisensee. The troops did, sorry, that when they arrested them. What we know is, if you see the Weisensee, there's that Globotnik and the others, they sort of walked around it, like they sort of approached from the south, and then it must have been quite difficult actually. Then they walked around the Weisensee and to the from western end to the eastern end. There was the eastern end, Mosbacher Alms on the eastern end of the Weisensee. But we know that they were in pretty bad condition. These characters, you just have to look at them. They don't look very fit anyway. So for them to be able to do something like that, bear in mind they've been the corruption within the Nazi system, and they held the power of life and death over hundreds of thousands of people, and then they find themselves in this condition where they can't actually even make themselves known to others because of who they are. I mean, the Austrians themselves, as I hope I've demonstrated, were only too happy to hand these characters over. And look, so that I think that's got to be quite clear. John said, I hear about Philip Buhler. Okay, well, I'll get around to that one day. And Gremlin says that Viet hated Globus. I don't think he did, actually. I think he liked him. Anyway, I mentioned this actually about the groups, and it's occurred to me that, with also, because you've got it's Christian Viet and Gottlieb Hering, who were Belgians, and Hering was the commander at Belgians death camp after Viet was posted to Lublin, and these are two characters that both know each other as well. It was Viet who pulled Hering along with him, and so Viet career, they were both from Heilbronn, Stuttgart area. They'd both been in the police. Now Hering had been somebody who he'd been in the political police. He was noted for his attacks on Nazis, and his career really should have come to an end in 1933. The fact that he then went on to do these things that he did was, I think, largely due to the protection he got from Christian Viet. So there you've got another little group there that was involved. Buller's wife jumps from Fishbourne Castle. The Einsatzgruppen. I went in summer. Was it summer before last? I went to the place where the Einsatzgruppen trained, and to me it was very strange. I mean, it's not mentioned. There's in the castle itself. There is a Pretsch. It's called. It's not so far from Leipzig. And in the castle itself, there was an exhibition, but it had nothing about the Einsatzgruppen times. So I went in, they allowed me to show the sort of. It was like an exhibition being sort of done wasn't like a professional, like it was sort of the kids had done it sort of thing. And then there was some photographs from the past, but there was nothing about the times of the Einsatzgruppe. And then later I was in the Prince Albrechtstrasse, the topography of terrors, in topography of terror. Sorry, I'm trying to say it in German. In Berlin, and they told me there that you're going to probably do an exhibition at Pretsch as well and make arrangements for it. But what was strange was this: as I was just sort of walking around there. Anyway, I went to the tourist office and I spoke to the lady, Jenny. Her name stuck in my memory, and I said, "No, I've been planning on coming here for a long time." And then I started stumbling over my words, and she said to me, "Just say everything that comes into your head now. It was just tell me what it means to you, this." Anyway, and then I said as much as I could, but it was a very, for me, it was a very interesting place though to be. Yeah, Düben. It's the Düben Heath. So the Düben Heath is an area, and Pretsch is a village. It's not very big, and you can walk through it in about 3 or 4 minutes. But it's got this castle. The castle's quite interesting. I thought that was good. Also, there was a very nice ferry, a park next to the ferry there. And during the night, I don't know what it was, but there was these couple of animals outside. I thought it might have been a wolf, although I don't know. I got part of it when I realised there was this howling sort of a noise outside. And by the time, but there's no light. Anyway, I got the camera outside, but I thought, well, it's totally black, and I thought something might come out. So I'm interested in wildlife as well, and unfortunately, nothing came up. My current camera that I'm using is a Samsung S23 Ultra, and I hadn't bought it then, no. And that one possibly, because it's a really good light. Once by the time I put it on the computer, I might have got something out. But anyway, I didn't say anything. Yeah, and also the area where these other things happened in Austria. Yeah, it is very attractive. It's super attractive around there. In Carinthia is wonderful. Really good. Really very good. So yeah, Mick asks, can I ask if you ever looked at the psychology of the perpetrators? Yeah, I went to a conference once on this, but it's above my understanding. I don't really understand why. My friend Michael Tregenza said that he thought that Christian Wirt, because he has a problem he had a problem with asthma, I think it was, which could really, but it was debilitating, and he thought that this had something to do with the violence he then showed. I don't know. At the conference I attended, this was attended for professional people, psychologists and things of this nature. But it was all above me. It's not the sort of thing I know about. What I know about sort of places, documents, this type of thing. So if you want to know sort of a military unit advanced or something like that, or how events were advanced, then perhaps I'm the person. But what was going through people's minds, I can't tell you. It's I don't understand. Yeah. Okay. So Gremlin mentions that the Vernichter, the destroyer, about Christian Wirt helped a lot. Okay. Oh, so there's a homeless guy in Fishbone on YouTube. Really interesting. Okay, that's very good, John. Okay, so thanks so much for being here today, and I'll try and put that together. And yeah, Mick says it requires a multidisciplinary approach. Yeah. Thanks, Colin. I might actually do. I want to go through. I did a talk from Tower Bridge a couple of weeks ago on how World War II started, and the appeasement that certain people. So I really want to go through some of the comments on there. I mean, it's incredible that people think that appeasement actually works. And so I think I might actually do that tomorrow. In 3,500 years of recorded human history, or something like that, there's not one single ever once where appeasement worked, and yet people think that, oh, this time it's going to work. Anyway, so I think I'll look through some of these appeasers, or what I would call them warmongers. We'll have a look at some of their comments. Anyway, sorry, Gary writes here, my granddad signed up for 12 years in the Navy in 1938, got extensive training in engineering, joined the Illustrious in 42 to attack the Vichy French in Madagascar, attacked the Tirpitz. Oh, well, he got around a bit. Yeah. Mick asks, how do I get notifications because I missed too much of this? Okay, well, I can tell you, I don't know how the notifications are supposed to work because they don't seem to. I upload every day. So it's every day. It's always the same time. All right, so if it's a shorts, if it's a proper video, so I normally do like the documentary videos on the Tuesdays and the Fridays at 2000 hours. I'll either have the shorts video or I will have a live. Now, at the moment, I can actually do lives, but when I go back to Germany in a couple of weeks' time, I won't be able to do it from there. It's I might be able to do it for a couple of days, so I'll be staying at where I work. But then once I get on the road, I can't do it because I just don't have the internet capacity, and I don't like doing it from the middle of nowhere because you never know if you've got any. You never know if the thing's just going to break down or not. So if you're sort of sitting in a civilized place, then you're all right. But if you're in the middle of nowhere, then it's difficult. Gary says that his grandfather had nuclear weapons tested on him. Oh dear. Mick says, I can't believe you spent time with David Irving and never smacked him. No, actually, as a person, he's quite interesting, but what he actually says in private and what he says in public are totally two different things. I mean, he's got a really annoying character, though. He's got and his private character is really grinding. He spent his Tirpitz attack from the Formidable. Okay, Formidable, yes, sorry. Okay then, thanks very much for watching. So tomorrow at 8 o'clock Central European time, 7 o'clock in the United Kingdom. Okay, oh sorry, Mick, right on to this one. What do you think of denialism? Have you read the Operation Reinhard book by the lads from Holocaust Controversies blog? No. Having said that, there are people say Holocaust Controversies that they're denying. The thing with this, I'm not having anything more to do with any of the denialists. It's pointless. It's just a waste of time. Because when people get to the conspiracists and the fantasists, they make things up. Now, if you're going to, it's the same reasons I'm trying not to watch fictional accounts of on films and things, because there's only so much you can take in your brain. You start forgetting things, such as I forgot the name of the person on Hitler's man in the East. I don't remember what he looks like, and so these are things that are worth having. As far as the denialists, you've got to look at why do they do it? It's because they're racists. And so why are they racist? This is the question. It's not the case as did the Holocaust happen or not. The question becomes, why are they racist? That's the real question. I can't answer that. That's about psychology. That's beyond my understanding. So that is the as I said earlier, I deal with documents. I know places. I can tell you a little bit about people's bios, this type of thing. Even if I forget the names, I can tell you about the bios because I don't forget dates. I've got this very good memory for dates. I've got bad memory for places. Sorry, not places. I've got good memory for places. Bad memory for names. Anyway, so with the yes, as Mike Mick says about the denialists, is that it's a circular argument. You give them a document and they ask for corpses, and you give them corpses, and then they'll say, "Are they human corpses?" And then they want to see documents. It's pointless. You cannot. The thing with a person who believes in conspiracies is a person who you can't convince them. And one of the things I've been thinking of recently is, I mean, if Trump says that 2 and 2 is 3, how much does 2 and 2 make? There's a question for you. And the answer is, that is it. There's nothing you can do. There's a scene in 1984, which is a novel, of course, when you've got Richard Burton's character was in the film. He's got Winston Smith, the hero, and he's holding up his fingers, and eventually he says, "Yes, I can see 4 fingers or whatever it is." If I tell you I'm holding up 3, how many fingers am I holding up? And if he says, if Big Brother tells you it's 4, it's 4. So this is it with conspiracies. It doesn't matter. I'm not saying that there's no conspiracies, because I actually I go out of my way to try and find things which are commonly believed, which are incorrect in history. But that's not conspiracy. I'm basing it on facts. And the thing is that conspiracists make things up. And the question no conspiracist will ever answer is who benefits from the conspiracy. And what the conspiracists will tell you is this: that governments, you can't believe governments. Governments sometimes lie. Yeah, okay, governments, that's true. Governments sometimes lie. But conspiracists always lie. So why would you believe the one that's always a liar over the one that sometimes might not tell the truth? It just makes no sense to me whatsoever. Anyway, yeah, Mick's got a very good word here. Yeah, he says, we live in a post-truth society. And the question is, who benefits from it? That is the thing. Who benefits from the post-truth society? And then you get to the point of why the post-truth society exists. Apparently, I once read that there are about 100 people at any one time writing about the JFK assassination. 90 of them may be a one-off, and 10 of them are full-time. If that is actually the truth, I don't know, but it makes a point. But most of them are doing it for one reason, which is possibly to make money. And the books which sell are the conspiracist books. So you can't tell the truth about what happened. You've got to make something up in order to make the money. So that's how it was Oswald alone. Yeah, of course it was Oswald alone. Now, I can't see how anybody could say anything else. Of course it was Oswald alone. I mean, Oswald may have had contact with the Central Intelligence Agency. He may have had that might have happened, but I very much doubt it. The chance that the link in with organized crime just doesn't make any sense at all. It's laughable. But anyway, yeah, it's only saying it works. Anyway, we don't need to go into that right now. We'll do that some other time. I do, however, have a video which I wrote. Sorry, the text I wrote 7 years ago. 7 years ago, 2018. And I actually filmed the location, and it's to do with the JFK. But it's all in Poland. Anyway, I'll get on to that. Yeah, Gerald Posner's book is by far the best one. I haven't read what's his name? The other book, Bugliosi. Haven't read his book, but I mean, I heard him speak. Sorry, he's dead now. But I heard him speak many times. But yeah, Gerald Posner's book is brilliant. I know Gerald Posner. But anyway, okay. Thanks for watching. I'll finish now. So all the best for me, and bye for now.